I'm Elizabeth from Elizabeth Made This, and I'm here today to talk about the Seamstress Tag. So this is something that went around YouTube a few months ago, and nobody tagged me, so I'm gonna tag myself. So this was something that Hollie Dolly put up, and I'll link her channel below in the credits and so forth. But it's just a really nice set of questions to kind of learn about other people sewing and what they do, and to give other people some context to everybody's channel. So I thought it's a really great thing, and I am just gonna jump on the train and do it. Okay, so who am I? Question number one. I'm Elizabeth, and I write at elizabethmadethis.com, which I've been doing for several years. I started blogging at emadethis.wordpress.com in like the last month of 2007, and I transferred over to my site, to elizabethmadethis.com, in a couple years ago, and I write there. And I'm a mom. I have 4 kids, 3 boys and a girl, and I am a wife, obviously, and sewing is my everyday escape. It's the creative thing that I do kind of in between moving everybody around and just getting everything in place in just daily life. And I love just being able to creatively problem solve in my sewing, and just being able to get an idea and put it down on paper and then transfer it into real fabric and just see what happens. It's just super fun and super creative, and I love that about sewing. When and why did I start sewing? So I have sewn pretty much my whole life. When I was a little girl, my grandma taught me how to sew on buttons and how to hand stitch, and I sewed by hand until I was married, really. I sewed stuff for my Barbies. I actually really didn't like Barbies as playthings. I liked making clothes for them, and I made clothes for my animals too. And I have this little pig who lives in my sewing room, and he has quite an extensive collection of costumes. And I made lots of home deck stuff by hand too. I made pillows. I made a duvet cover in college, and this is something that my mom made, which is this beautiful yo-yo quilt that she made for me. And she taught me how to make yo-yos, and I made 7 or 8 full yo-yo quilts for people. I unfortunately don't have any because I gave them away, but I made a lot of these by hand. And then I made some curtains when I was first married by hand, and I block printed them, and that was interesting. So I finished making those curtains, and then I thought I could totally do this faster if I had a sewing machine. So I bought my sewing machine, and I just started doing stuff around our apartment. I didn't have any thought that I would make clothes. And then I was pregnant with my oldest son, and I hated the maternity clothes that year. So that was 9 years ago that I was pregnant with him. And the colors that year in the maternity clothes were just dark and horrible, and just these big shapes that I just did not like. So I bought a butterick pattern of an empire waisted dress that was made from jersey, and I made it in this bright spring green fabric, and it was just so happy, and I felt much better the rest of that pregnancy, just being able to wear colors that I was much more comfortable with. And from that dress on, I have just really fallen in love with clothes construction and just seeing how things are put together. And I love being able to look at something I see in the store and say, hey, I could totally make that, and then be able to go home and do that. It's just really it's cool to just be able to do all that creative problem solving, and just to have an outlet for creativity in general. It's just, sewing is kind of my break from the day, and it's just fun, and I hope it's always a part of my life. So my favorite / proudest sewing make, my favorite is probably these jeans. So these jeans are a nice pair of white skinny jeans that I made, and I took a silk scarf and I cut it up and I embroidered it all over the surface of the jeans with different top stitches, and they're just really fun to wear. And these jeans are kind of a microcosm of my sewing. Like my motto is creative sewing beyond the pattern envelope, or creative sewing outside of the lines, both of those things. So like outside of the sewing line, so literally like the pattern envelope, and it's great what's on the pattern envelope, but it's fun for me to just look at a basic pattern and say, okay, what can I do that would make this more interesting? And a lot of times, like if you study ready-to-wear garments, if you use the zoom features like on all of the ready-to-wear sites and really look at all of those things, a lot of the clothes that are in stores are really simple garments, but they have something added to them. You know, maybe it's a different sleeve, maybe it's a different button style, maybe it's a different closure. They're all kind of starting with a simple form for the most part and just adding stuff to it. So I love being able to do that. So these particular jeans actually appeared in this issue of Altered Couture magazine. This is the November, December, January issue in 2016. So a couple years ago now. Because they submitted in 2015. So that winter, that year. But it's my jeans and they're on somebody else. So that's kind of a fun thing to be able to see your project in print. I actually have a couple more projects coming out that are going to be in Altered Couture too, so I'm excited for that. And then my proudest I make is probably this coat. So this is a wool Melton coat that I made a few years ago, and it has this cool funnel neck to it, and a snap, and these cover buttons. There's a lot of tailoring that I had to do in this jacket, which was really kind of fun and really interesting to learn that process of tailoring. And then it's got this really cool lining, and it's all the lining's all bagged in there, and I love wearing this coat when it comes to the winter time. It's not the warmest wool coat. I think I have a lot to learn on that front, but I'm glad when it's warm enough outside and yet it's still cold that I can wear it, because I think it's a beautiful coat, and this fabric was such a treat to work with too. My most disastrous make was easily a maternity top that I made with my third son. By the time I got to that pattern, which was just a woven top that had a little placket with kind of it swung out in the side, so I knew there was going to be plenty of room for my belly. But by the time I got to cutting out the pattern and making it, I had expanded in girth, and I used a really silky polyester floral, which was really pretty, but it just was not strong enough to handle that placket design. So by the time I was ready to wear it out, it just shredded along the placket lines. The stress of me gaining inches here and the fabric not being strong, it just totally ripped. And thankfully that day, I was wearing a camisole, so it was not nearly as embarrassing as it could have been or should have been. So I'm really, really grateful for that. My most favorite place to go fabric shopping is when I'm on vacation. So when I get a chance to go visit different cities, I always stop and look up fabric stores and bring home souvenirs in the form of fabric. So it's really fun to be able to go back in my stash and to go into my closet from the garments that I've made, and say, hey, that came from San Francisco, or look, that was from my Chicago trip. So it's just really, really a fun thing to do. My most used pattern is Jolly 2921, which is the scarf collar top. I've only made the scarf collar a couple of times. Since that point, I take off the neckline, I add a different neckline in, I add to it, I take away from it. I've changed the fit of it slightly, but overall I love the fit of that pattern, and there's not a single knit top that crosses my table that doesn't get compared to that pattern, because it fits me so well in my shoulders and the arm side too. I have really narrow shoulders, and I'm really short from my shoulder to my underarm. So anything that fits me in those two areas, I'm there. It's just bound to be a favorite pattern. My most dreaded sewing task is just getting ready for sewing. I love the actual construction. So everything that takes me from not being able to, keeps me from getting to that sewing part is kind of, it always takes some mental space to just prepare myself for it. So that's usually just getting the pattern ready. So if I'm working on a PDF, just taping it up, or if I'm tracing a pattern, I have to get my mind ready to trace off stuff. And if I am working with tissue patterns, then I have to prepare myself to do battle with the tissue too. I hate cutting out patterns. When I get to the actual cutting of the fabric, I'm totally fine. So as long as I have a good cup of tea ready to get me through either taping or tracing or cutting out tissue, I'm usually okay. My favorite sewing task, on the other hand, is definitely easily top stitching. This jacket that I made, it's a denim jacket that I made for the wardrobe Sudoku contest a few months ago at Pattern Review that I won second place for, which is really exciting. It has all this really fun top stitching, and top stitching any chance that I get to add it to a garment, I just do it. I add more than the pattern requires. I love doing it. I love getting those nice even straight lines, and I love doing it in decorative threads. Like on these jeans, I blended two different colors of thread to create a custom top stitching thread that I used a triple straight stitch that kind of, by the time you add those two colors together, it creates really the same thickness as a normal top stitching thread would be. And plus you can make it in any color that you want to, which is really nice. Like, especially on this white denim, that was a really nice option for me, because it tied into the colors on the rest of the jeans, to use those two kind of aqua green colors. And then it's unique too. It's something that's contrast, that's different than the top stitching colors that are available. So yay, top stitching! My favorite sewing entertainment, there's a couple of podcasts that I really like to listen to. I've been listening to a lot of that and watching That Sewing Blab and The Tailor and the Dressmaker. I think both of those two shows are just really fun to watch, and also just really, you just learn a lot listening to other people talk about their sewing and where they've been and their experience, and it's just really wonderful. Also, I'm a Christian, so I listen to a lot of sermons just to learn more about the Bible. I like doing that. And once in a while, if I've got a really big hand sewing project like the reverse applique cardigan that I made a couple months ago, I will sit down and watch some not British sewing stuff, just British programs in general. Like that reverse applique cardigan I made watching 2 series of Grant Chester. Yeah, I binge watched it. I'll admit that. I totally binge watched it all, and I got through my project. It was wonderful. Okay, so printed or PDF? I would say yes. I use printed patterns. I use PDF patterns. I love that PDFs give you kind of the option to not have to go to the fabric store to get a pattern. And even though you have to tape them up, which is kind of annoying, but even so, like it's nice to be able to just grab those patterns whenever you want to. And it's great too that the PDF designers are just so accessible. You can talk to them directly. Like that's such a wonderful advantage. Say like, hey, what did you mean by this step? Or hey, I really like your pattern. Just to be able to have that kind of personal connection with the designers is really special. But the other part of that is that I often sew from magazine patterns. I love my Berta Styles and Autobres. I love that there's a million designs in every issue, and they're all so fashion forward too. And then you can go back years. I made a jacket. I made a jacket in May, I think, that was from a 2008 Berta, and it still looked really cool and relevant. It had great features on it. It was still like looking not vintage or just out of fashion or something. So whenever I'm going to approach a project, I always look in my magazine stash first in case I have something that's similar or that I can adapt into a current kind of style. What sewing machine do I use? I have a Janome family. So I've got a Janome serger and a Janome 2000 cover stitch machine that's really new. And I'm just really starting to love it for my knit hems and for bindings on knit garments. And I'm kind of curious to play with it with denim and other fabrics too. And then my main machine is a Janome 2000 DC 2007. And that thing is such a workhorse. I use it literally every day, and it goes through chiffon, it goes through denim, it goes through upholstery fabric. There's like literally nothing that thing will not handle really well. And it has a beautiful stitch, and I love it. It's not the highest end Janome machine, but it's worked really well for me, and I've had it since I started sewing with my machines 10 years ago now. So, yay, I'm pro Janome. And what other hobbies do I have? I am a violinist. Both my degrees are in music education, and I've played violin since I was 7, and teaching music is probably always going to be a part of my life. I have a couple of violin students right now, and I love teaching. I just love teaching, period. That's part of the reason why I'm on YouTube, because I want to just share my teaching about sewing too. Just share my experience about what I know and what I've learned and all of that. I also love to cook, and I love to bake. I baked my wedding cake, and a lot of times when I'm done with my sewing for the day, or if it's just early in the morning, I love to just bake some bread or bake some cookies. At Christmas time, I bake like 12 different kinds of cookies as kind of a family tradition to do that. So all of that. But anyway, I just wanted to go through this Seamstress tag, and thanks to Hollie Dolly for putting it up and coming and bringing the sewing community together and just helping everybody kind of learn a little bit more about each other. And I hope to continue making videos here on YouTube about sewing, and I will talk to everyone later. Happy sewing! Don't forget to like and subscribe too.